One type of bookbinding tool that it is quite difficult to get if you're not investing in a lot of equipment is that of a guillotine or plow. Often either electric or hand guillotines are used for more bulk bookbinding, while plows are more traditionally used for hand bookbinding. But both of these pieces of equipment are really quite expensive. And various people have tried various methods, and I've also tried various methods of finding an alternative way of trimming the book edges, but without terribly much success. I used to have when I first started binding, I was working in binderies that had electric guillotines. And then when I first started on my own, I got an antique 3-ton guillotine. That was wonderful, but I had to leave it when I moved to the other side of the country. And yeah, after that sort of tried various things, but a lot of the binding I do doesn't actually require trimming the edges, so I didn't really bother too much. But I have been wanting to find an alternative, particularly, well, it's not really necessary for most of what I do, but sometimes, particularly for some type of edge decoration, it really can be important. Plus, sometimes you just want to, trim off excess paper. And also when you rebind an old book, trimming the edges can really spruce it up. So I'd been wanting to try and had various ideas. And really there are two things that I've realized are important, and why a lot of the sort of DIY ideas don't work. And that the one is that you really need to have a single bevel blade. So that means that your blade will be flat on the bottom, and only slope off on the top. And the other thing is that it really needs to lie totally flat. So I'd been sort of wanting to try this idea of a DIY press for a while, and my idea was also to then have a wider piece here, because that helps to hold it flat. And I was going to try and get a chisel or a paring knife or something to try doing it with that. And then I saw somebody on Facebook, I think, mentioned that he'd used a lino cut blade, or at least the blade from a lino cut tool. And I thought, okay, let me try that. And this was actually the blade that I'd had, it must be over a decade old. It was a set of old tools, half of which had become unusable because I'd used them for the wrong things. Anyway, and I found this one. I think round would really be better, but I did this and it actually works very well. So I want to do another video on edge decoration, but I thought before I do that, I'll show you this method of making a very simple DIY plow. And I'm going to show you, in fact I'm going to make one now, because this I just made as a temporary test to see if it'll work. So I want to actually make myself a more intentional one. So that's the one thing, is the actual plow and blade. The other thing is that I made a press with a wider surface here. What I did here is I just really glued 3 pieces of MDF board together. I really did, I mean, MDF's not great, but I did that because I happen to have quite a lot of it, exactly the same size. The important thing is that this edge should be totally flat, and then MDF is good in the sense that it'll be precisely even, and the angle here will be 90 degrees. And so what I did was I just glued these 3 boards, or it could have been more, but 3 seems to work together, making sure that they were flat on this edge. And I've just recently turned it into a press, but I had actually just used it with big G clamps, holding this bottom board and these 3 together. This stuff here, never mind that, I had a slight problem because I couldn't get bolts that were exactly right. That's why that's there. I'll do another video sometime on how to do a simple press, but this one is just slightly different in that it's got 3, or it's got a wider surface here, and the reason for that is that it enables you to really make sure that your blade is flat. And as far as the blade goes, or this part goes, this was actually a bit of an accident. I was just going to attach it to a small piece, a thinner piece of wood, and I happened to have this and couldn't be bothered to cut it. And then I discovered that it actually was quite good, because having a wider piece, it's actually much easier to hold your hand on it. It's a bit like a computer mouse, and that makes it easier to run it across here, making sure that it's flat. So I've actually cut I'm going to make one now, and I've cut a piece that is similar. It could actually have been slightly bigger, but it's like a computer mouse. Okay, these are the tools I've got. They're just a very cheap set of woodcut tools, a South African brand, and most of them wouldn't be suitable, but they need to be flat ones. Okay, I've put it between 2 boards, the blade, to hold it firm. Yes, and that came out much easier. Okay, so I now have my blade and the piece of MDF I'm going to attach it to. The advantage of MDF is that it is totally flat, so even if it's not great material, you don't have to worry about that. And what I do now is it just needs to protrude a bit, so I'm going to just place it on there and then trace around it. I'm no great expert at woodwork or anything, so in fact I'm decidedly amateurish. So I'm quite sure that there are people who would be able to do this far better. But the point is that it does make something that works. So, and then this is a little bit tricky, but I seem to have managed fine last time. What I need to do is just basically cut out enough so that that fits in there and is flat. So I just first of all went around there with a knife just to create a slight recess. So you really just need to very, very carefully work with this until you have it deep enough so that the tool fits in there, but only just fits in there, so that the bottom will be flat. Okay, that looks as if it's okay. Now there may be better ways of doing this. When I tried this one, I assumed that I'd have to get some other sort of glue to glue metal to wood. But then I discovered that I could just use PVA and I put a piece of paper across to hold it in, and that actually has worked so far. So I'm going to do that again. Might also work with linen or something, I don't know. But seeing this worked, and it's held in place. Obviously, because I mean, yeah, there's no pressure for it to fall out because you're holding it down. So yeah, I mean, you could try with a better glue for metal, but I'm just going to do this again because it did work. But I think this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the paper across the whole piece. But first I make sure that I get the glue right in there, and then I'll just put it everywhere else as well. And remember, of course, that the flat side must be down so that you see the bevel when you hold it up. I'm going to also, I can't remember what I did last time, but I think it makes sense to put glue on the paper as well. I'm just going to do it on the whole sheet, and then I'll trim it off afterwards once it's dry. Hope that'll work. Oh, wait, that wasn't so clever because it can't go over the blade. So I'll just cut this off a bit, and then we'll place that so that it goes to the edge there. What I'm going to do now is just put it in the press between boards. I will put it on some wax paper though, in case any glue seeps out. And then I'll just give it a quick hard press and come and check. Okay, and as expected, a lot of glue has seeped out. See, that's pretty flat there. But I'm going to put it back in the press. I'm just going to clean off obvious excess glue now. I'll leave the paper on until it's dried completely. I'm going to put it back and leave that to dry in the press while I go and have lunch. Okay, it's now later and this has come out of the press, and I'm just going to trim the paper off and then we'll use it. Now, to trim the book, I'm going to put it into the press. The key thing here is that you need to line it up very carefully because obviously you want to cut it straight. So it's best to, I'm not sure if you can see that with the black end page, sorry about that, but I will draw a precise pencil line there, which I then line up with the edge of the top boards. The bottom board isn't precise, but that doesn't matter. Now I find with this, the press, I'll say more about presses again. This, you can probably do a better one. It's been a bit of a trial and error. What I did this time was added a handle here, because although it could actually be, might be easier with a proper handle, but because you're wanting to line that up exactly, it helps to be able to grasp onto something. I also put a couple of boards in the back in order to help me have space there. The other thing is that one puts a piece of grey board behind it against the backboard, because you are going to end up cutting into that. So it's crucial here to line up the line you drew where you want it cut with the edge of these top boards. And when that's done, I'll close up my press. So we're now ready to try it out. The one thing is that I don't think it's particularly sharp. It was a new blade, unlike my old one. So I'm just going to start by sharpening it a bit on the stone. And then on a bit of leather. This is all an experiment in that I haven't used a round one before. It is coming sharper. Always keep the bottom side flat, remember. Okay, let's see how that goes. So then basically, as I said before, you don't want to apply too much pressure. You're really just taking off a couple of sheets at a time. So it is rather a slow process. But the crucial thing is to hold it flat, so that this is against this, and you keep that flat. And then you very gradually just continue. I find it best to with the head or with the tail, to do it from the foredge to the spine, so that you get your mull and everything on the spine off at the end. I'm not quite sure if there are rules about that or not. I've also found that it's best to make sure that you do have at least a couple of millimeters that you're taking off, because if you try and take off too little, you'll often end up with problems. But then the basic thing is just really to keep cutting, and it's really the flatness of these two surfaces that ensures that it's accurate. When you get to the end, you'll find that you do go into the grey board, which is why it's important to have it there. And there we have it. So this one seems to have worked quite well. If I were doing it again, I might make it slightly wider, just in terms of ease of holding it. You could also make this slightly wider. But the important thing is basically that you're able to to hold this comfortably while you're pulling it across. So let's take it out and have a look. And there we have it, nice and smooth. There's a little bit of something at the end. Yeah, if you get anything that's not cut off easily, you can always just gently sand. It's just really a little bit of fluff, really, paper fluff, whatever you call it. But otherwise that's really quite nice. So yeah, I mean, it is time consuming, but I find it a very helpful thing to have. I wouldn't use it for all books, but there are times when it's definitely useful. And for certain forms of edge decoration, you really do need to be able to trim the book nicely. I am going to be doing another video, hopefully next week, on transferring printed designs onto the edge of a book. So yeah, if you're interested in these sorts of videos, please like and subscribe. I mean, I'm afraid I've been very bad about keeping up with this channel, but I really am restarting and getting it going again. At least I sincerely hope so. So I hope I will have more helpful videos before long.